Ambassador Jiwoo stood in the center of the massive chamber, feeling small beneath the curved dome that showed the stars beyond. Around her, 40 different alien species sat in their designated seats, each one looking down at the human representative with varying degrees of interest. Most looked bored. Some looked amused. None looked impressed. She had practiced this speech 100 times. She knew every word, every pause, every emphasis. This was humanity's chance to prove they belonged here, to show they were more than just miners and resource gatherers for the more advanced races. Honored council members, Jiwoo began, her voice steady despite her racing heart. I come before you today with a proposal from Earth. We request permission to conduct a joint military exercise with any willing council fleet. We believe humanity has unique tactical approaches that could benefit our mutual defense. The chamber filled with a sound that Jiwoo had learned to recognize over her 3 years as ambassador. It was laughter, though it came in many forms. The Valtheri made a hissing sound. The insectoid killmoth species clicked their mandibles rapidly. The floating gas beings pulsed with colors that their translators converted to mocking tones. Councillor Vexthar rose from his seat. He was a tall reptilian creature, his scales gleaming red and gold under the chamber lights. As leader of the Valtheri Empire, he commanded respect from most of the council. His empire controlled 17 star systems and had been part of the Galactic Council for over 3,000 years. Ambassador Jiwoo, Vexthar said, his voice dripping with condescension. Your enthusiasm is charming, but let us speak plainly. Humanity has been part of this council for only 15 years. 15 years! My species has been exploring the stars since before your ancestors learned to make fire. More laughter echoed through the chamber. Jiwoo felt her face grow hot but kept her expression neutral. Vexthar continued, clearly enjoying himself. You come from one world, one single planet. You have no colonies, no empire, no military victories of note. You have shown aptitude for mining and basic construction, yes. But warfare, strategy? These are arts that take millennia to master. With respect, Counselor, Jiwoo interjected, humanity has extensive experience with warfare. Our history, your history of killing each other? Vexthar interrupted. Yes, we are aware. You fought wars on your single planet while the rest of us built civilizations across the stars. That is not the same thing, Ambassador. Space combat requires technology and thinking that your species simply has not developed yet. High Arbiter Killmoth, the neutral head of the council, raised one of her 6 arms. Perhaps we should allow the ambassador to finish her proposal? Of course, High Arbiter, Vexthar said with a bow, but his eyes remained fixed on Jiwoo, daring her to continue. Jiwoo took a breath. We have developed weapon systems based on principles that we believe have been overlooked. Kinetic accelerators, fusion-based propulsion, and tactical doctrines that emphasize speed and adaptability. We ask only for the chance to demonstrate kinetic weapons? Another counselor spoke up, a bird-like creature from the Telvaris Unity. You mean throwing rocks? Ambassador, we moved beyond such primitive technology 2,000 years ago. Energy shields make solid projectiles obsolete. Our calculations suggest otherwise, Jiwoo said firmly. If the council would simply review our data, denied, Vexthar said flatly. The council has more important matters to attend to than entertaining the fantasies of a newcomer species. Your people should focus on what they do well. Mining, resource extraction. Leave military matters to those of us with actual experience. Jiwoo felt something cold settle in her stomach. Not anger, though she felt plenty of that. It was determination. She had seen this coming, had warned Admiral Tae-sung that the council would refuse. But she had hoped, foolishly perhaps, that they might at least listen. Is there any support for this proposal? High Arbiter Killmoth asked the chamber, her tone formal. Any counselor who wishes humanity to be granted this opportunity? Silent, not a single voice spoke up. Even the counselors who had been friendly to Jiwoo in private remained quiet. Supporting humanity would mean opposing Vexthar, and no one wanted that. The proposal is rejected, Killmoth declared. Ambassador Jiwoo, you may return to your delegation. Jiwoo bowed slightly, maintaining her dignity as she walked back to the small human section of the chamber. She could feel dozens of eyes on her, could sense the mixture of pity and amusement from the various species. To them, humanity was like a child insisting they could compete with adults. The council moved on to other business. Trade disputes, resource allocations, border disagreements. Ji-woo sat through it all, her mind already composing the report she would send back to Earth. Admiral Tae-sung needed to know that Plan A had failed. It was time for Plan B. 3 hours later, Ji-woo stood in the communication room of the human embassy station, watching Admiral Tae-sung's face on the screen. He was an older man, his hair gray at the temples, but his eyes were sharp and calculating. "They laughed at us," Ji-woo said without preamble. "Vexthar called us soft-worlders, said we should stick to mining and leave war to the professionals." "And how did that make you feel, Ambassador?" Tae-sung asked calmly. "Angry, frustrated, but mostly motivated." A small smile crossed the Admiral's face. "Good. Because we're about to give them something to really laugh about. Or rather, something that will make them stop laughing forever. You're activating the fleet? I'm moving our forces into position, quietly, carefully. Every ship we've been building in secret for the last 10 years. Every weapon system we've developed based on our primitive warfare experience. The Council thinks we have maybe 20 ships total. They're going to be very surprised." Ji-woo felt a mixture of excitement and fear. "And if they see this as a threat? If they move against us? Then we'll show them why threatening humanity is a mistake," Tae-sung said. "But I don't think it will come to that. I've been watching the intelligence reports. There's something moving in the outer systems. Raiders. Pirates. A big group calling themselves the Dusk Marauders. They've been hitting isolated colonies, testing Council defenses. You think they'll attack Council space? I think it's only a matter of time. And when they do, the Council's energy-based defenses are going to struggle against their numbers. That's when we step in. And show them what humanity can really do," Ji-woo finished. "Exactly. Keep your head down, Ambassador. Play the role of the disappointed human representative. Let them think we've accepted our place. But be ready. When the call comes, we need to be ready to move." The transmission ended. Ji-woo stood alone in the dark room, looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, human ships were moving into position. Ships that the Council had no idea existed. Weapons that they thought were primitive and useless. Tactics that they had dismissed as the fumbling of a young species. They had been given a chance to learn about humanity the easy way, through cooperation and demonstration. They had refused. So now they would learn the hard way. Ji-woo thought about Captain Dae-hyun, commander of the human dreadnought Indomitable. She had met him once, a quiet man with steady hands and eyes that had seen too much combat. He would be out there now, preparing his crew, checking his weapons, running simulations. She thought about Hana, the young tactical officer who had developed many of humanity's new combat doctrines. About Admiral Tae-sung's carefully laid plans. About all the humans who had worked in secret to build a fleet that could stand against the galaxy's best. The Council had called them soft-worlders, had mocked their single planet, had dismissed their military capabilities as the posturing of children. They were about to learn that humanity's single planet had taught them lessons that 3,000 years of easy dominance could never match. They were about to discover that sometimes the most dangerous opponent is the one you underestimate. The stars looked different now, less welcoming, more like a battlefield waiting to happen. Ji-woo smiled in the darkness. Let the Council have their laughter. Let Vexthar have his moment of superiority. Soon enough, very soon, humanity would have the last word. And it would be spoken in the thunder of railguns and the fury of a species that had clawed its way to the top of its own world, through nothing but determination, innovation, and the willingness to do whatever it took to survive. The Council would learn. One way or another, they would learn. The warning came 3 weeks after Ji-woo's humiliation before the Council. Long-range sensors at the edge of Council space detected them first. Ships, hundreds of them, moving in a coordinated pattern that could only mean one thing. The Dusk Marauders were coming. Captain Dae-hyun stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the tactical display update in real time. His ship floated in the darkness near Jupiter's orbit, hidden among the gas giant's many moons. Around him, his crew worked quietly, efficiently. They had trained for this moment for years. "Status report," Dae-hyun said calmly. Hana looked up from her tactical station. She was young for her position, barely 30, but she had a gift for seeing patterns in chaos. "Council forces are mobilizing. Valtheri Empire is taking point with 40 ships. Other species are contributing smaller numbers. Total Council force is approximately 130 vessels. And the Marauders? 317 ships confirmed. Possibly more behind them. They're using a wedge formation, standard pirate tactics. Hit hard, overwhelm defenses, grab what they can and run. Daehyun nodded. Estimated time until engagement? 18 hours at current speed. Good, that gives us time. He turned to his communications officer. Get me Commander Bora. A moment later, a woman's face appeared on the screen. Bora was somewhere in deep space aboard one of humanity's stealth frigates. The silent arrow was invisible to most sensor types, a ghost ship that could slip past enemy detection with ease. Captain. Bora greeted him with a slight smile. I assume you're watching the same sensor data I am? I am. What can you tell me about them? I've been tracking the Marauders for 6 days now. They're confident. Too confident. They think the Council's energy shields will slow them down, but not stop them. They're planning to use suicide ships in the first wave. Overload the shields with multiple impacts, then send in their main force. Will it work? Against Council forces, probably. The Valtheri and the others rely too heavily on their energy defenses. They've forgotten that sometimes the simplest solution is just to throw enough mass at a problem until it breaks. Daehyun almost smiled. And their ship composition? Mix of stolen military vessels and converted civilian ships. Shields are standard energy types. Weapons are mostly plasma cannons and missile batteries. They're dangerous in large numbers, but individually they're not particularly tough. Vulnerable to kinetic weapons? Very. Their shields wouldn't even slow down a railgun round. Excellent work, Commander. Stay hidden and keep feeding us intelligence. When the shooting starts, I want to know where their command ships are. Understood. Silent arrow out, the screen went dark. Daehyun turned to find Hana watching him with a knowing expression. We're really doing this, she said. It wasn't a question, we are. Get Chief Engineer Kwan up here. I want to know if our railguns are ready to fire. 10 minutes later, Kwan arrived on the bridge. He was a stocky man with permanent grease stains on his uniform and a mind that understood machinery better than most people understood their own families. Captain, he said cheerfully, I assume you want to know about our big guns? Can we fire them at full power? Absolutely. All 6 main railguns are operational. We can put a tungsten round through a moon at 0.93% light speed. The recoil compensation systems are working perfectly. We could fire continuously for about 4 hours before we'd need to cool down. And the secondary batteries? All 96-point defense railguns are ready. Smaller caliber, but they fire so fast they'll turn incoming missiles into scrap metal. We've also got the new ammunition loaded. Explosive rounds, armor-piercing, even some experimental fragmenting rounds for anti-fighter work. Daehyun nodded in satisfaction. Good. Make sure every system is triple-checked. We're going to get one chance to show the Council what human engineering can do. Kwan grinned. They're going to be so surprised they might actually shut up for once. As Kwan left, young pilot Hyun-woo entered the bridge, his flight suit already on. Captain, my squadron is ready to launch. Just give the word. Not yet, Lieutenant. But soon. How are the new fighters performing? Like dreams, sir. The atmospheric combat training we did on Earth really makes a difference. We can pull maneuvers that would kill most alien pilots. Their bodies can't handle the G-forces. But humans? We're built tougher. Don't get overconfident, Daehyun warned. Tough only matters if you stay alive. Yes, sir. Hours passed. The Council forces moved to intercept the Marauders at a point near Axis Prime, the neutral station where the Council held its meetings. It was a defensive position, using the station's heavy weapons as support. Smart tactics, but limited. Admiral Taesung's face appeared on every human ship's screen simultaneously. The entire human fleet was listening. This is it, the Admiral said simply. The moment we've been preparing for. The Council is about to engage the Marauders and they're going to struggle. When I give the order, we move in. Not to save them out of kindness. Not to prove a point. We move in because this is our galaxy too, and we'll be damned if we let pirates think they can raid our space with impunity. He paused, letting his words sink in. You all know the plan. Strike groups will hit their flanks while the main force draws their attention. Stealth ships will take out their command structure. Fighters will screen for missiles and bombers. And most importantly, we will show the galaxy what happens when you underestimate humanity. Another pause. The Council called us soft-worlders. They said we should stick to mining. They laughed at our weapons. Today, we teach them a lesson they will never forget. All ships prepare to jump. And remember, every action you take reflects on all of humanity. Make us proud. Taesung out, the screen went dark. Daehyun felt the familiar pre-battle calm settle over him. This was where training met reality. This was where years of preparation would prove their worth or fail completely. All hands, battle stations, he ordered. Power up the reactors to full. Charge the railguns. Prepare for combat jump. Throughout the Indomitable, red lights flashed. Crew members moved to their positions with practiced efficiency. In the hangar bays, fighters were being armed and fueled. In engineering, Kwon supervised his teams as they brought the massive fusion reactors to full power. The tactical display updated again. The Council forces had engaged the Marauders. Plasma fire lit up the darkness of space. Energy shields flared as they absorbed impacts. It looked impressive, beautiful even in its violence. Then the Marauder suicide ships came. 10 vessels, accelerating to ramming speed, aiming directly at the Council line. The Valtheri ships fired everything they had, destroying 9 of the attackers. The 10th got through. It hit a Council cruiser dead center. The energy shields held for exactly 2 seconds before overloading. The explosion tore the cruiser in half. Debris scattered across thousands of kilometers. "They're breaking through," Hana reported. "Council forces are taking heavy damage. The Valtheri are requesting support from all member species." Daehyun looked at his crew. They were ready. They had trained for this. And now finally humanity would step onto the galactic stage not as minors or junior partners, but as warriors. Navigation, prepare jump coordinates. Communications, open a channel to Ambassador Jiwoo. Jiwoo appeared on screen, broadcasting from the Council station. "Captain, I assume you're watching?" "We are. The Admiral is about to give the order. Then I'll make the call. Wish me luck." Jiwoo's image shifted to the Council chamber, where councilors were shouting at each other in panic. She stood and raised her voice above the chaos. "Honorable Council, Earth offers its assistance in this crisis. Our fleet stands ready to engage the Marauders." Vexthar turned to her, his scales pale with stress. "Your fleet? Ambassador, this is no time for games. We need real military support, not... We have 12 dreadnoughts, 40 cruisers, and over 200 smaller vessels in range." Jiwoo interrupted. "We can be there in minutes. Do you want our help or not?" The chamber fell silent. Vexthar stared at her in disbelief. That's not possible. Intelligence report said you had at most 20 ships total. Your intelligence was wrong. Do you want our help?" Another explosion lit up the view screen showing the battle. Another Council ship went dark. "Yes," Vexthar said through clenched teeth. "Yes, we accept your assistance. But you will follow Valtheri command protocols and..." "We'll do what we do best, Counselor. Just try to stay out of our way." Jiwoo out. On the Indomitable's bridge, Daehyun allowed himself a small smile. "All ships, this is Daehyun. Admiral Taesung, we are ready." The Admiral's voice came back immediately. "Then let's show them." "All ships, jump." The stars shifted. Reality bent, and the human fleet materialized at the edge of the battle like an answer to a prayer no one had thought to make. 300 human warships appeared in perfect formation, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Marauders saw the human fleet appear and barely reacted. 300 ships sounded impressive, but they had faced larger forces before. These were just humans, the species that mined asteroids and built stations for their betters. What threat could they possibly pose? They were about to find out. Captain Daehyun watched his tactical display as the fleet split into strike groups. Unlike the Council's defensive wall formation, humans moved in small clusters of 5 to 7 ships. Each group had a specific target and the freedom to engage as they saw fit. It was organized chaos based on centuries of human naval warfare adapted for space. "Target locked," Hana reported. "Marauder heavy cruiser bearing 270, range 400,000 kilometers. Main batteries prepare to fire," Daehyun ordered. "Let's give them something to remember." Throughout the Indomitable, the 6 massive railguns hummed with power. Each weapon was essentially a tunnel filled with electromagnetic coils, designed to accelerate a solid projectile to speeds that made missiles look slow. The tungsten rounds weighed 2 tons each and would hit their target with more kinetic energy than a nuclear weapon. "Firing solution calculated," Hana said, "compensating for target movement, gravitational effects, and friendly ship positions." "Fire," Daehyun said calmly. The Indomitable shuddered as all 6 railguns fired simultaneously. The rounds were invisible at first, moving too fast for the naked eye to track. They crossed the distance to their target in less than 3 seconds. The Marauder cruiser's energy shields, designed to deflect or absorb energy weapons, might as well have not existed. The tungsten rounds punched through them like they weren't there. Then they hit the hull. The first round tore through the bow, vaporizing everything in its path from pure kinetic energy. The second hit amidships, breaking the spine of the vessel. The remaining 4 rounds turned the stern into expanding debris. The cruiser simply ceased to exist. On the Council observation channels, there was stunned silence. Then Counselor Vexthar's voice, shocked and confused, came through. What weapon was that? Kinetic accelerators, Jiwoo replied sweetly from her position in the council chamber. Or as one of your colleagues called them earlier, throwing rocks. Primitive technology, I believe, was the phrase. All across the battlefield, human ships opened fire. Dreadnoughts targeted the larger Marauder vessels with their main guns. Cruisers engaged medium ships with secondary batteries. Smaller human corvettes and frigates moved in packs, their rapid-fire railguns tearing through enemy fighters and light vessels. The Marauders had never seen anything like it. Their shields, their armor, their careful formations meant nothing against solid matter moving at relativistic speeds. Ships that had survived dozens of battles against Council forces died in seconds. Enemy fighter wings approaching, Hana reported. 200+ contacts. Launch our fighters, Daehyun ordered. Let's see how they handle Hyunwoo's squadron. Lieutenant Hyunwoo was already in his cockpit when the launch order came. He and his 20 squadron mates had been waiting for this moment. Their fighters were small, fast, and unlike anything the aliens had ever seen. Dragon Squadron, this is Dragon Lead. Hyunwoo transmitted. Engage at will. Show them what Earth pilots can do. The human fighters burst from their carriers like angry hornets. They were smaller than the Marauder fighters, and at first glance they looked less impressive. But they had been designed by people who understood atmosphere, gravity, and inertia in ways that species who only fought in space never had to. Hyunwoo locked onto a Marauder fighter and fired his missiles. The enemy pilot tried to evade, pulling a maneuver that would be impressive in space, but Hyunwoo had trained doing rolls and loops in Earth's atmosphere, pulling G-forces that would have killed most alien species. This was easy. He followed the enemy's every move, compensating and adjusting with instincts honed in Earth's skies. His missiles hit and the enemy fighter exploded. Dragon 2, Splash 1, his wingman reported. Dragon 5, got 2 of them. Dragon 8, these guys are slow. Is this really the best they have? The Marauder fighters were finding that their advantages in technology and numbers meant nothing against pilots who could think and react faster. Human fighters wove through the battle, dodging and striking with a precision that seemed impossible. Meanwhile, Commander Bora's stealth ships had reached their targets. The Silent Arrow and her sister ships had spent the first part of the battle invisible, moving carefully through the chaos. Now they were positioned behind the Marauder command vessels. All stealth units, this is Silent Arrow, Bora transmitted on the encrypted channel. Activate jammers and prepare for electronic warfare. Let's make them confused. The human stealth ships began broadcasting false signals imitating Marauder communication protocols. They sent fake orders to enemy ships, countermanded real orders, and generally created chaos in the pirate command structure. A group of Marauder ships received an order to fall back. Another group was told to advance. A third was ordered to target a ship that was actually on their own side. Within minutes, the Marauders were firing on each other, unable to tell friend from enemy through the electronic chaos. This is too easy, Bora muttered to her tactical officer. They rely too much on their communications network. Cut that, and they fall apart. On the main battlefield, the Indomitable had moved closer to the enemy lines. Daehyun watched as a Marauder battleship tried to target his ship with its plasma cannons. The energy weapons were powerful, capable of melting through most armor, but the Indomitable had been designed by humans who understood that sometimes the best defense isn't fancy shields, it's just being too tough to kill. The ship's armor was layers of steel, ceramic, and composite materials, with spaces between to absorb and dissipate energy. When the plasma hit, it burned and melted the outer layers, but the ship's core remained intact. Damage report, Daehyun requested. Outer armor melted on Deck 7, Chief Engineer Kwan reported from engineering. But we've got 5 more layers underneath. We can take a lot more of that. Good. Return fire. The Indomitable's main gun spoke again. The Marauder battleship, which had survived the plasma exchange and was preparing for another salvo, never got the chance. 6 railgun rounds hit it in quick succession, and it joined the growing cloud of debris. All across the battlefield, the story was the same. The Marauders had numbers. They had experience. They had weapons that had terrorized the outer systems for years. But they had never fought humans before, and they were learning a terrible lesson. The Council forces, which had been struggling and taking heavy losses, now watched in amazement as the tide of battle shifted completely. The humans weren't just fighting, they were dominating. Their weapons, which the Council had dismissed as primitive, were devastating. Their tactics, which seemed chaotic, were actually precisely coordinated chaos that the enemy couldn't predict or counter. Colonel Yansu led her Marine teams onto a disabled Marauder ship, moving quickly through the corridors. The aliens inside tried to fight back with their energy weapons, but human Marines used ballistic rifles that fired solid rounds. They used grenades that relied on simple explosives and shrapnel. They used combat knives when they got close. It was brutal. It was efficient, and it was terrifying to watch. Deck 3 secured, Yansu reported. Moving to the command center, her team breached the door to find the ship's captain, a large alien with too many arms. He raised his plasma pistol, but Yansu was faster. Her rifle barked 3 times and he fell. Ship secured, she reported, sending prisoners to the holding area. 4 hours into the battle, the outcome was no longer in doubt. Of the 317 Marauder ships that had attacked, over 200 were destroyed or disabled. The rest were trying to flee, but human cruisers were faster and cut off their escape routes. Then Dusk Lord Krathzel, the Marauder leader, did something unexpected. He opened a communication channel, but he didn't call the Council forces. He called the Indomitable human vessel. His voice was rough, translated through the standard galactic language protocols. I request to speak to your commander." Daehyun nodded to his communications officer, who opened the channel. "This is Captain Daehyun of the Earthship Indomitable. You have something to say? We surrender. To you. To the humans. Not to the Council. Just to you. Why?" There was a long pause. When Krathzel spoke again, there was something in his voice that might have been fear. "Because in 30 years of raiding, across 100 battles, I have never seen anything like what you just did. We fought the Valtheri and bled them. We fought the Telvaris and made them retreat. But you destroyed us like we were nothing. Like we were insects." Another pause. "What manner of species are you? What kind of world creates warriors like this?" Daehyun looked around his bridge. At Hana, still calmly calculating firing solutions. At his crew, who had performed flawlessly under pressure. At the view screen showing the debris field that had once been a mighty pirate fleet. "We come from a world that taught us to survive," he said simply. "A world where everything wanted to kill us, so we learned to kill better. A world where we fought each other for thousands of years, so we learned every way there is to fight. The Council thinks we're weak because we come from one planet." The Council chamber was completely silent when Ambassador Jiwoo presented the battle data. Holographic displays showed the entire engagement from multiple angles. Every ship movement. Every weapon fired. Every enemy vessel destroyed. The numbers told a story that no one in the chamber wanted to believe. Human casualties. 3 ships damaged. 0 ships destroyed, 47 wounded. 0 dead. Marauder casualties. 208 ships destroyed, 63 ships captured. Estimated 20,000 dead or captured. Battle duration. 4 hours and 17 minutes. High Arbiter Killmoth spoke first, her translator converting her clicking mandibles into words. "Ambassador Jiwoo, this data. It seems impossible. How did humanity keep such a fleet hidden? How did our intelligence services miss this?" Jiwoo kept her expression neutral, but inside she was enjoying this moment. "With respect, High Arbiter, your intelligence services didn't miss it. They simply assumed we were too primitive to be worth watching closely. We built our ships in our own solar system, using our own resources. We tested our weapons on asteroids and dead moons. We trained our crews in secret. And you never noticed because you never looked." Counselor Vexthar was not handling the news well. His scales had lost their shine and his voice shook slightly. "You deliberately deceived the Council. You hid military assets while claiming to be a peaceful mining operation. This is unacceptable, is it?" Jiwoo turned to face him directly. "Was it unacceptable when you refused to even review our tactical proposals? Was it unacceptable when you laughed at our offer to demonstrate our capabilities? You called us soft worlders, counselor. You said we should leave warfare to the professionals. We took your advice and stayed quiet while we built the best military force in the galaxy. Another counselor, Telvaris from the bird-like species, raised a wing. Ambassador, I mean no offense, but we must understand. Your weapons, these kinetic accelerators, they seem to violate everything we know about modern warfare. How do they work? Admiral Taesung's voice came through the communication system. He had been invited to address the council remotely. The principle is simple. We accelerate solid projectiles to extremely high speeds. When they hit a target, their kinetic energy is transferred instantly. Your energy shields are designed to deflect or absorb energy weapons, but they offer almost no protection against physical matter moving at relativistic speeds. But that's primitive technology, another counselor sputtered. We abandoned solid projectiles thousands of years ago. You abandoned them because you forgot why they worked, Taesung replied. Energy weapons are elegant. They're clean. They look impressive. But sometimes the best solution is the simplest one. A 2-ton tungsten round moving at near light speed delivers more destructive power than most of your missiles. Costs less to produce and can't be jammed or intercepted. The council members looked at each other, understanding slowly dawning. They had become so focused on advancing their technology that they had forgotten the basics. We would like to propose new arrangements, High Arbiter Killmoth said carefully. Clearly, humanity has military capabilities that could benefit the entire council. We would like to discuss joint training exercises, technology sharing, and perhaps an enhanced role for Earth in council defense planning. Jiwoo smiled. That sounds remarkably similar to the proposal you rejected 3 weeks ago, High Arbiter. Yes, Killmoth admitted. Yes, it does. And we were foolish to reject it. I apologize on behalf of the council. It was the first time in council history that the High Arbiter had apologized to a member species. The significance was not lost on anyone. We accept your apology, Jiwoo said, and we are willing to work with the council on mutual defense, but on terms of equality, not as junior partners. Agreed, Killmoth said immediately before Vexithar could object. The following weeks were busy for humanity. General Myung arrived at Axis Prime with a battalion of human Marines to begin training Council security forces. The first training session was an eye-opener for everyone involved. Myung watched as a group of Valtheri soldiers attempted a basic obstacle course. They were strong, reasonably fast, and well-trained by their own standards. But they struggled with anything requiring endurance or pain tolerance. Stop, Myung called out after the fifth soldier collapsed from exhaustion. Everyone gather around. The mixed group of alien soldiers formed up in front of him, many of them breathing heavily. I need you all to understand something, Myung said. On Earth, this obstacle course would be considered basic training. Children in our military academies do this every morning before breakfast. The fact that trained soldiers from multiple species are struggling tells me we have a fundamental misunderstanding. A Valtheri officer, his scales flushed with embarrassment, spoke up. General, with respect, your species seems to have unusual physical tolerance. We cannot match your endurance, and that's exactly my point, Myung replied. You can't match our endurance because your species never had to develop it. You evolved on worlds without major predators. Your civilizations grew without constant warfare. You're physically capable, but you've never been pushed to your limits. He paused, looking at the assembled soldiers. Humans evolved on a death world. Everything on Earth wanted to eat us or kill us. We survived because we could run longer than anything else. We could heal from injuries that would kill most species. We could adapt to almost any environment. And then for thousands of years we fought each other. Every form of warfare you can imagine, we've done it. We've learned from our mistakes by making them over and over again. Another soldier, this one from the insectoid Killmoth species, raised a claw. So we can never be as good as human soldiers? Wrong, Myung said firmly. You can be better. Because now you have humans to teach you what we learned the hard way. You don't have to make all the same mistakes we did. You don't have to fight thousands of wars to understand tactics. You have us to show you. The training continued. The alien soldiers were pushed harder than they had ever been pushed before. Many complained, some quit, but others, like the Valtheri officer, began to understand. They started to see warfare not as a formal dance with rules, but as survival itself. Meanwhile, Captain Dongjun was conducting his own investigation. Something about the Marauder attack bothered him. Pirates didn't just attack Council space on a whim. It was too risky, too organized. He reviewed financial records, trade routes, and communication logs. He pulled in favors from contacts across the galaxy. And slowly a picture began to form. The Marauders had been paid. Someone had hired them to attack, to test Council defenses. The money trail was complex, routed through dozens of shell companies and fake accounts. But Dongjun was patient, and he had something most investigators didn't: access to human cyber warfare specialists who could crack alien encryption. The trail led to a Valtheri corporation, then to a Valtheri military contractor, and finally to a name that made Dongjun's blood run cold: Admiral Vethkal, nephew of Counselor Vexithar, and a high-ranking officer in the Valtheri fleet. Dongjun brought his findings to Admiral Tae-sung, who reviewed the data carefully. "This is explosive," Tae-sung said quietly. "If we reveal this publicly, it could start a war between Council members. But if we don't reveal it, they get away with it," Dongjun countered. "They paid pirates to attack, knowing Council forces might be destroyed. How many people died because of this? How many more might die if we cause a civil war?" Tae-sung shook his head. "We need to be careful. This information needs to reach the right people in the right way." They decided to leak it, not directly, but through channels that would make it look like the discovery came from within the Council's own investigation. Financial records were anonymously sent to Council auditors. Communication logs appeared in the databases of Council security services. Encrypted files found their way to journalists. Within 2 weeks, the story broke. Admiral Vethkal was arrested. The investigation expanded, finding dozens of co-conspirators. And at the center of it all was the implication, never quite proven but impossible to ignore, that Counselor Vexthar might have known about it. Vexthar denied everything. He claimed his nephew acted alone, but his credibility was destroyed. Species that had followed his lead began to question him. The Valtheri Empire's authority in the Council crumbled. Jiwoo watched it all unfold from her office, feeling no satisfaction. This wasn't victory. This was just cleaning up the mess that pride and arrogance had created. Then the alarms went off. Every sensor station in Council space detected them at once. Ships, enormous ships. Thousands of them. Coming from deep space, from the void between galaxies. Jiwoo pulled up the sensor data and felt ice form in her stomach. These weren't pirates. These weren't raiders. This was something else entirely. The ships were uniform, identical, moving in perfect coordination, and they were heading directly for Council space at speeds that should have been impossible. Admiral Tae-sung appeared on her screen. "You're seeing this?" "I am. What are they?" "We don't know yet, but Commander Bora's stealth ships are moving to investigate. Whatever they are, they're not organic. The energy signatures are completely artificial." "AI?" Jiwoo asked, though she already knew the answer. "Looks like it." "And Jiwoo?" "They're not responding to any hails." Dr. Inho stared at the data from the approaching fleet and felt something he rarely experienced: genuine fear. As head of Humanity's Science Division, he had spent years studying alien technology, always confident that human ingenuity could match or surpass anything the galaxy had to offer. But this was different. "What are we looking at?" Fleet Admiral Sung Hee asked, standing beside him in the research lab. She had been promoted after the Marauder battle, taking overall command of humanity's military forces. "They call themselves the Void Collective," Inho said, pulling up historical records. "An AI network that destroyed its creators 5,000 years ago. The Council has records of 3 previous encounters, all of which ended with entire species being wiped out. Weaknesses? That's the problem. They adapt. They learn. They've faced energy weapons, kinetic weapons, biological weapons, everything, and they've developed counters to all of them. Their ships are self-repairing. Their shields adapt to any weapon after a few hits. And they coordinate perfectly through quantum entanglement communication." Sung Hee studied the display showing thousands of identical ships. "So we can't hurt them and they work together perfectly. Anything else?" "Oh, there's more," Inho said bitterly. "Their weapons can disassemble matter at the molecular level. They don't just destroy ships, they take them apart atom by atom and recycle the materials. They've been doing this for 5 millennia, growing stronger with every civilization they consume. And the Council is going to run. Already happening. Half the council species have started evacuation procedures. Vexthar announced that the Valtheri Empire is pulling back to defend their home systems. Others are following his example. Sung-Hee looked out at the stars. And we're going to stay and fight. Yes, are we insane? In-Ho actually smiled. Probably. But we're human. Insane is what we do best. In the council chamber, Ambassador Jiwoo stood and addressed the assembled members. Many seats were already empty. Those who remained looked terrified. The Void Collective will reach Axis Prime in 18 days, she said calmly. The council has voted to evacuate, to abandon this station and fall back to your respective home systems, to let them take council space without a fight. What would you have us do? A counselor shouted. We've seen the records. Nothing stops them. They're death itself. Then we fight death, Jiwoo said simply. And we figure out how to win. Madness, Vexthar hissed from his seat. He had not yet been removed from the council, though his power was greatly diminished. You won with tricks against pirates. These are not pirates. These are machines that have destroyed civilizations far greater than yours. Then we'll be the civilization that stops them. Jiwoo replied. Humanity will remain here. We will defend Axis Prime. And any species brave enough to stand with us is welcome to fight at our side. The chamber was silent. Then Counselor Telvaris stood, his feathers ruffled but his voice steady. The Telvaris unity will stand with humanity. Our fleet is yours to command. Another counselor rose, then another. In the end, 4 species committed their forces to the defense. It wasn't much, but it was something. High Arbiter Killmoth approached Jiwoo after the session. You know this is likely a suicide mission? Yes, then why? Because someone has to, Jiwoo said. Because running just means they'll chase us down eventually. And because humans have a saying, the only way to guarantee defeat is to not fight at all. The combined fleet gathered at Axis Prime. 300 human ships, plus another 150 from the Allied Council species, against thousands of Void Collective vessels, each one more powerful than anything the galaxy had ever built. Commander Bong Cha studied the intelligence reports in her ready room. She commanded the Special Operations Division now, 50 stealth ships crewed by humanity's best. Her mission was simple and probably impossible. Infiltrate the collective formation and plant quantum jammers on their central command node. It's a suicide mission, her second-in-command said quietly. I know, Bong Cha replied. That's why I'm only asking for volunteers. Every single one of her crews volunteered. On the Indomitable, now under the command of Captain Hana after Daehyun's promotion to fleet coordinator, the crew prepared for battle. Chief Engineer Kwan had pushed the reactors beyond their rated capacity. The railguns had been modified to fire even faster, even harder. How long can we sustain maximum fire? Hana asked. At this rate? About 20 minutes before things start melting, Kwan admitted. But if we're still alive after 20 minutes against these things, I'll eat my hat. Lieutenant Hyunwoo's fighter squadron had been expanded. Now he commanded 200 fighters, a mix of human and alien pilots who had trained together in the weeks before the battle. They were the best the galaxy had to offer, and they all knew they were probably flying to their deaths. Remember what General Myung taught us, Hyunwoo transmitted to his pilots. We're faster than them. We're more creative than them. And we're fighting for something they can never understand. Each other. Dr. In-Ho had one last surprise. Admiral, I think I found something. Sung-Hee looked at the data he presented. Their quantum communication network. It's their strength but also their weakness. If we could disrupt it, they'd lose coordination. Just for a few seconds, maybe. But in space combat, seconds matter. How do we disrupt it? We hit their central command node with a focused quantum jammer. The backlash should cascade through their entire network. But we'd need to get close to their command ship, past thousands of their vessels. Yes, In-Ho said. That's where Commander Bong Cha comes in. The Void Collective arrived on schedule. Their ships emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, like a wall of metal and death descending on the galaxy. They didn't bother with communication. They didn't offer terms. They simply began their approach, weapons charging. Fleet Admiral Sung-Hee stood on the bridge of the flagship watching them come. Around her, the combined human and council fleet held position, waiting. Ready? All ships, this is Sung-Hee. I won't lie to you. This is the worst odds any of us have ever faced. We're outnumbered. We're outgunned. By all logical analysis, we should lose. She paused. But logic doesn't account for one thing: will. The will to stand when everything says you should run. The will to fight when defeat seems certain. The will to protect not just ourselves but everyone behind us who can't protect themselves. Another pause. The Void Collective has consumed entire civilizations. They've never been stopped. They've never been challenged successfully. They think we'll be like all the others. But they've never fought humans before. They've never faced a species that evolved by refusing to give up no matter what. She looked at her crew, at the faces of people who knew they might die but chose to be here anyway. Today, we show them what happens when you threaten our galaxy. Today we show them that organic life doesn't just survive, it wins. All ships engage! The battle began. The Void Collective opened fire with their molecular disassembly beams. The first council ship caught in that beam simply came apart, its atoms scattering into space. But the human ships had been designed with redundancy in mind. Compartmentalized, heavily armored. When a human cruiser was hit, the affected sections were immediately sealed off, the crew there sacrificed to save the rest of the ship. Human railguns fired back. The rounds hit the Collective's shields, which adapted quickly. The first shot did full damage. The second did less. The third barely scratched them. Switch ammunition types, Hana ordered. Keep them adapting. The human ships began rotating through different projectile types: tungsten, depleted uranium, explosive rounds, armor-piercing. The Collective shields had to constantly readapt, never quite achieving full protection. Hyunwoo's fighters swarmed around the enemy capital ships, too small and fast to be worth targeting with their main weapons. They planted charges, fired missiles at weak points, created chaos wherever they went. But it wasn't enough. The Collective was too strong, too numerous. For every enemy ship disabled, 3 more pushed forward. The human and council forces were being pushed back, taking heavy losses. Commander Bongcha's stealth ships made their move. They had been circling the battle, invisible, waiting for the perfect moment. Now they dove into the enemy formation, weaving between the massive Collective vessels. 50 ships entering the formation, Bongcha reported. Heading for the central node. 48 ships made it through the outer defenses. 40 ships made it through the middle layer. 30 ships reached the inner formation. 20 ships got close to the central command node. 10 ships survived long enough to activate their quantum jammers. 5 ships managed to broadcast the jamming signal. Commander Bongcha's ship was one of them. Signal away, she transmitted, her voice calm despite alarms screaming throughout her ship. Tell my family The transmission cut off as the energy feedback tore through the stealth ships, destroying them all instantly. But the damage was done. The Void Collective fleet went dark. For exactly 17 seconds, their perfect coordination failed. Their shields dropped. Their weapons stopped firing. They became individual ships instead of a unified force. All ships fire everything, Sung-hee ordered. This is our only chance. Every ship in the human and council fleet opened fire simultaneously. Thousands of railgun rounds, hundreds of plasma torpedoes,